For people who want decor, there you go. So today's video is going to be why I don't use the latest flagship phones, and the main reason is because they're expensive. And I could end the video right there, but I rather extend my reasonings on why I don't think the latest flagship phones are that beneficial to most people, and that mid-range phones and older flagship phones are something that people should be buying nowadays. So starting off with my first point, and that is that they're expensive. And they're not just like any type of expensive. We're paying like $900 to $1,200 for a phone. That's really expensive. So the personal phone that I use is an iPhone 10, and I'll get into the reasons of why I chose this phone, even though I did purchase it last year. And some people say, isn't the latest always the best? And yes, on paper, the latest flagship phones by what a company has to offer is the best of the best. So you'll have the latest processor, you'll have the latest camera, you'll have the latest display, you have the latest features, you'll have basically what the company has to offer, the best of the best for the entire year. So on paper, yes, flagship phones are without a doubt one of the best phones you can get. But do you really need it? Like, do you really want to shell out all that extra money just to get the latest of features that you're probably not going to use in your day-to-day life? Most of the time, I want to say no. I'm all about value, and that's why I think older flagship phones and now the new trend of mid-range phones are so popular nowadays, because you're still getting sometimes a very good processor, you're still getting a very good camera, you're getting a good display, but you're just leaving out all those latest features that don't really mean that much to you, and you're getting it at a very deep discount. And there's a main reason why I think a lot of companies are spending a lot of time on developing these mid-range phones that are between $300 to like $600 now. So I'll get into that later in the video. So value is up next, and I know people with Android phones are gonna be mad at me and say, why don't I just get an Android phone if I like value? But I'm stuck in the Apple ecosystem, so I just have to deal with what Apple has to give me. I know it's a little bit of a crutch, but I'm just stuck in the Apple ecosystem. That's all I can say. So what I had to work with at the time when I bought this phone was the iPhone, the 11 series, the 10s series, the 10, 7, and the 8. So let's do a process of elimination of what I like and what I don't want. That was weird. What I like and what I don't like. So first on the list, I like the size of the iPhone 6s. So all the Pro and Plus models are gone. The 7 and the 8 were good contenders, but I think with the way the future is going with Apple and Face ID and facial recognition just in general, I had to just jump on board with the iPhone 10 and the series above that. So 7 and 8 are gone. So all that's left was the 11 Pro, the 11, 10s, 10R, and the 10. And this is where it gets a little bit harder, but not too much. So user interface across all of them are pretty much identical, so I'm not missing out on that much. So storage was another priority for me. I think 512 would be a little bit overkill. 256 seems to be more realistic of what I would end up using, and the 10 was almost a no-brainer in terms of the price. Yes, I could have got a better battery life with the 11 or the 10R, but I think that I got a better deal because I am getting a telephoto lens. I have an OLED screen. I also have stainless steel, so the phone is also lighter, which I value personally. Some people might not value that. Some people might value battery life. We all just have different wants and needs, but I think in terms of the value of my money, the iPhone 10 was a pretty good buy. Also, the processor, I know it's considered slow or not as snappy, but I've never complained about the speed. I think that only comes into play when you're doing comparisons. Like, yes, this phone is slower than the 10R, the 11, and the 11 Pro. But the main difference, and what I always say in my comparison videos, standalone by itself, this phone is still really, really fast. I never notice or I say out loud that, hey, I wish this phone was faster. So that's another thing I want people to take in consideration. Don't just focus too much on comparison videos. Look and see if that phone is performing fast enough for you. So that's how I ended up buying the iPhone 10. Make a realistic list and start doing process of elimination. Fortunately, I didn't get a 36 on the ACT doing this method or 1600 on the SAT, but come on, those tests were pretty hard. So now let's talk about the new kid on the block, and that would be mid-range phones. And I just want to start off by saying, like, who cares if your camera can record video in like 8K? Who cares if your phone has like RGB lighting on the back with an active cooler? Asus, I'm talking to you. who cares if your phone can go like 100 feet underwater and still can be used? Like, I'm not even going in like a 6 feet pool. Like, who cares if your phone has a display of 144 hertz? Like, I don't think the average consumer cares about all those little small features. I don't want to say small because I know there's a lot of research and development that goes into that, but they're just not features that the average consumer is going to care about or go, ooh, I need that feature. I'm going to pay $1,000 for that, right? Now, there's a time and place for everything. Like, I do think flagships do have their place in society, but I think for the average consumer, all we really care about is like a good display, good performing chip, a good camera, good battery life, and a great OS. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, you can toss us like wireless charging here if you want. Thank you on the SE. You can toss in, you know, some cables that come in the box. Yes, Apple, I'm talking to you. There's just the essentials is what we really want, and we want the essentials to be really good. All the extra add-ons, we don't really care about that stuff. And I think this is why companies are spending so much more time on mid-range phones rather than spending so much time on flagships, just because there's not as many people buying those phones anymore. And it's like, you have Samsung with the A and the E series, you have Google with the A series, you have the Pocophone series, you have the iPhone SE series, you have the OnePlus Nord series now. It's just, these companies have realized that, yes, you can make the latest and greatest devices, but if no one's buying them, you're kind of losing money on the business side of things. You rather spend money on phones that are like $300, $600 where people are going to buy them in a high volume because they're just more beneficial to the consumer. I also feel like there's this stigma with mid-range phones and older flagship phones. Like, when people when people ask for my recommendation on a smartphone, I always give them like a mid-range phone or an older flagship phone, and they always ask me, well, why don't I just buy the latest and most expensive thing out right now? And it's like, I think your $500 to like $800 extra that you would spend on that is better well spent on something else. Like, you don't need all those small features, I don't say small, but you don't need all those extra features that the flagship phone's giving you because you're not gonna be using it day to day. Like, there's some people that don't even know what 5G is, but they want a 5G phone. Like, they have to have it because that's the newest thing out. And it's like, come on. If you don't know what 5G is, why are you trying so hard to get it? It just doesn't make sense to me. The last topic I want to talk about is older flagship phones specifically. And there's a reason why I prefer older flagship phones than mid-range phones, even though mid-range phones offer incredible value for your money. And for me, what I believe is that the company spends the most amount of money, the most R&D, which is research and development, on their flagship phones. And they also use like the highest quality products, because for me, it was really hard to decide between the iPhone 10 and the 10R. But I think just getting that stainless steel, the extra telephoto lens, the OLED screen, it was just too hard for me to pass up. And even though the iPhone 10R came out a year later than the iPhone 10, like, my phone, I still think offers much more value than the iPhone 10R, even though I am taking a hit on the battery life, but I haven't been complaining about the battery that much. And when it comes to processors, I think hardware-wise, the last 2 years, it's been pretty close. Like, you're not gonna see that big of an improvement. I mean, we have components that are more, I don't want to say more valuable than what's in a typical PC nowadays, but it's like, we have phones that have 16 gigabytes of RAM. We're on our phones more often, and I think the flagship phones is where the company spends most of their materials on, the most highest quality material on. Now, I'm speaking from a standpoint of the iPhone. I know with Android, you guys have so many choices to choose from in terms of flagship as well as mid-range phones. I can't really speak on that because I don't really use Android phones like that, and I don't want to give advice on stuff I don't know about. But hopefully within the upcoming months, I try to test out more Android phones and know what else is out there. But I think you guys are good. I would say personally for me, I think the OnePlus offers incredible value. Even the E series on the Samsung, the A series on the Google Pixel, there's just so many brands out there in terms of the Android where it's almost impossible to go wrong. It's really just what you want on the OS side of things. when it comes to Android, in my opinion. So now I know there are some people who want the latest and greatest stuff, and this video isn't to convince you to buy older flagships or mid-range phones. It's more of letting people be aware that you don't have to stretch yourself thin or just go out and just buy the latest and greatest product just because you can and you think it's going to give you the most value. There's definitely a status when it comes to owning the latest product. I can't deny that. Every time I see someone with the latest iPhone or Android phone, I'm just like, okay, they definitely love to have the latest thing. No denying that. Not that that's a bad thing or anything. It's just, for sure it's what goes into marketing and, psychology of things for people. But there's also people who value longevity. I think that's another big reason of why people get the latest flagship phones, because they just want the best quality, best material, and the longest lasting phone that they can get at the most expensive price. So I know some people who shell out a lot of money on the latest flagship phone because they don't want to upgrade for the next 3, 4, 5 years, which I completely respect on that. I'm not a person who likes to spend a lot of money on cheap phones and then you end up upgrading every year or two, right? You might as well just spend a lot of money up front and get the best features and just ride that phone as long as you can until it stops working. That's how I see it. Also, when it comes to flagship phones, they typically have the longest OS support. So that's another good thing of buying flagship phones. Goes back with longevity. But my main point was that I don't want people to dismiss older flagships or mid-range phones just because they're cheaper. Just take a look at them and see if they'll give you value, because I don't want people to just think that because it's cheaper that you're getting a bad phone, right? Like, phones are still pretty good by today's standards. So with all that being said, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I know it's a little bit different. I'm not reviewing anything. I'm not unboxing anything. It's more me just speaking on my mind, because there's a lot of mid-range phones that are about to come out pretty soon before the flagships come out later this year. And like I said, I don't want people to just spend their money on the latest thing because, just because they can or they want to have the latest thing. Get stuff that's valuable for you. I'm probably just regurgitating everything that I'm saying in this video now. So if you did enjoy the video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more content. And as always, guys, much love. So for the people who have stayed to the end, yes, I know my D-brand skin robot camo is gone. It's because, my birthday, I went a little bit crazy on the D-brand store with the pastel skins. And like I said, I'm not sponsored by D-brand, but kind of purple is going on this phone this week. So stay tuned for that. Peace.